people with ADHD can struggle with self-esteem issues.
Millie Mackintosh,
the former star of reality TV series Made in Chelsea.
One of my triggers for my anxiety is meeting new people. I'd gone from having panic attacks every few weeks to every few days to I developed really intense health anxiety, and every day I thought I was dying. Bit of a breakdown, but also a breakthrough, because I got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to look after my health in a different way. Then when I got my ADHD diagnosis as well, understanding that I am more prone to burnout than your average non-neurodivergent person is helping me to have more self-compassion and to understand that it's okay to slow down. Your worth isn't your productivity, and it's okay to do a bit less.
With the understanding of ADHD that you have now, what would you tell the younger version of yourself?
I would say
this episode is dedicated to anyone who has recently bought a notebook and genuinely believes it will solve all their problems. This sponsored ad was agreed to be 90 seconds long, but because I know most of you have ADHD, I negotiated it down to 89 seconds. I challenge you to test your ADHD by seeing if you can sit still for 1 minute 30 seconds while I tell you about our sponsor, Tiimo app. If I can sit down and record take after take of this message for 2 hours, then I'm sure you can listen to 90 seconds. So here's a short word from our sponsor. Tiimo app is a perfectly tailored app that I use daily, and maybe it's worth you giving it a try to see how it might improve organising your life too. Running a podcast is actually a lot harder than you might think, and juggling all of the moving parts would be near impossible if it weren't for Tiimo app. How? Well, Tiimo is designed specifically to hack the neurodivergent brain, a brain that might struggle with time agnosia, object permanence, memory cognitive load, task initiation, anxiety, or procrastination. All things I'm extremely guilty of too. And how on earth does it help you, Alex? I hear you scream impatiently at your computer or phone screens. Well, the award-winning Tiimo app is the perfect life-hacking tool to help your time management and kick you up the bum when you need it most. If you want to stay ahead of the competition, then the visual planning Tiimo app is specifically designed to help your structuring, organising, focusing, and goal setting. It has a visual timer, providing a tangible and visual representation of time to help users pace themselves so you never miss a deadline ever again. It also has an efficient lock screen reminder service to alert those of you who are very out of sight, out of mind with your chores and afraid you might forget them. It brilliantly centers all of your tasks in one place across devices, both on a web and mobile apps, to streamline your overflowing schedules and make them much more digestible and a lot less intimidating. And for those who find big tasks too overwhelming to even start, Tiimo breaks them down into more manageable subtasks to get the ball rolling. In fact, this app helps me so much that it actually reminded me to record this message to advertise the app. Give it a go. Why not? It might just help. Anyway, back to the episode. Millie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
As always, I want to start the episode by revealing your ADHD item. Every episode, I ask my guests to tell me an item that most represents ADHD for them, and yours is hidden under that cloth. I'm going to reveal it straight away.
Okay. There we go.
Now, people will probably recognise that as the logo for the Notes app on the phone. I've got my suspicions, but we'll talk about that a little later on.
Okay.
We have an opening tradition on the podcast, Millie, where I ask the guest the same question. And I don't want to break that tradition, so I'll ask you the question now. What was your earliest memory of feeling different?
I think it was at school when, I'm trying to think how old I was. I was diagnosed with dyspraxia, which actually a lot of people who have ADHD actually have dyslexia or dyspraxia because it's part of that neurodivergent spectrum. And I got diagnosed with that, but they didn't spot the ADHD. And I just remember feeling like I didn't really fit in at school.
Did you find it easy to make friends when you were that age?
I had one best friend and we were super close. And then she moved to America suddenly during the holidays, some kind of family thing. And it was a shock because I didn't know that was going to happen. And I took it, like, I remember it really was like a big blow. And I struggled to make friends after that because all the kind of friendship groups were formed. And I actually ended up going to 5 schools and kind of hating a lot of it.
Moving from school to school, that must have had quite an impact on your sort of sense of stability. Do you remember if that had a negative effect on your mental health at the time?
It definitely did. I think I thought, like, there was like different reasons. Like, one, I went to a boarding school when I was 10. And then that only went up to age 12. And then I went to another school, which I actually started to really enjoy. And I felt like I was kind of coming out of my shell. I was about 12. And then that school went into liquidation, like just closed down really suddenly. So then I had to join a new school like halfway through the term. That was really hard because, again, the friendship groups were there. I felt like an outsider and I was quite badly bullied at that one. And I thought, okay, girls are awful. I'll go to a mixed school for 6th form and that will be better. And it wasn't. So, yeah, lots of schools. And I think the moving around was really difficult for me, yeah.
In your teenage years, I mean, that's quite a roller coaster ride for anybody. Given what you sort of might know about ADHD, can you look back and see ADHD presenting itself through those years? And did you feel when you were a teenager that you were different in any way from your peers?
As a teenager, I desperately wanted to fit in. I wanted to kind of overcome the bullying that had been quite intense at the beginning of my teens. And so I kind of learnt to pretend to find them funny as a way of fitting in. And I kind of became like the class clown and was always kind of getting in trouble. And then discovered alcohol, which I thought was really fun. And yeah, and then I just was trying to fit in, kind of doing what teenagers do.
Do you remember what they were bullying you for?
It was a lot of appearance-based things. And I know people with ADHD can, struggle with self-esteem issues. I have body dysmorphia. I've had that since I was quite young. I can't remember when that started, probably around the time I was bullied. But I was bullied for, being, I had like a growth spurt and had very long limbs and was very thin and was kind of picked on for that, like being, I guess because I had the dyspraxia and I had like extra time in my exams and maybe it was like that side of it. I had glasses, I had braces, I had acne. So they were just really picking on me for my appearance. But then once I started figuring out that I could change my appearance with makeup and dyeing my hair and like changing how I looked, and then I realized I could get attention from boys, I guess searching for that dopamine.
At that time as well, you're having this horrendous time at school. What was your relationship like with your parents? And since your diagnosis, has that changed in any way?
My relationship with my parents as a teen, I was at boarding school hating it, angry at them for putting me in the school. So I was kind of like, it's me against them, that kind of mentality. I didn't want to tell them things. And they also, I guess, didn't find it very easy to talk about emotions and talk about like what was really going on. So I wasn't super close to my parents as a teen. I didn't tell them everything, didn't tell them a lot of things. And now I've got my diagnosis. They're really supportive. My mum actually has been listening to some of your episodes, and we've been like kind of sharing books, and she's learning more about it. But when I first told her I was going to get tested, and that my therapist thought I had it, she took it quite badly. She got quite upset. She like, but darling, why do you need to know? Like, what what's it going to change? And I think she thought maybe I was. Like there was some feeling of like resentment that I wasn't diagnosed, but I didn't feel like that at all. It's like, how would they have known? Because I didn't have those like stereotypical traits that so many of us kind of brought up thinking, okay, it's not you. I think you tend to think it's going to be a boy. They're going to be very disruptive, maybe a bit aggressive. So I didn't kind of fit the mold. So my mum took it quite badly, but now I've kind of explained it to her, and I think she gets it, that it's actually very validating and helpful for me, and potentially, she might have it too. We have a lot of similar traits, so I can't speak for her, but I think she's finding it interesting to learn more about it.
I'm so pleased, firstly, that there's been some positive movement in your mum's sort of understanding of the diagnosis. It's very common, this internal prejudice some people have, particularly cross generations, where there's misunderstanding or just lack of awareness, like you alluded to. It's only boys who are running around and causing problems. So you get, a woman goes to their parents with a diagnosis and it's sometimes dismissed at first. Masking is a big topic in the community, and it's one of the big misconceptions I like to debunk, that people with ADHD don't work hard. I think with masking, I think it's such a hidden workload. It's this sort of constant feeling that you need to adjust who you are, change your entire personality to be more palatable, likable for whoever you're with at any given moment. And it's so hard work. It's so exhausting. Do you think you've masked in your life? And in what way do you think you've masked?
I think I definitely have. I think I've been listening to some of your other episodes, and I think women often feel like you don't want to be too much. You don't want to be... like you kind of want to keep yourself small to like protect yourself. And then sometimes I've definitely overshared and then really like regretted it afterwards, or been like in my head a lot about it, like, oh, should I have said that? And I find myself wanting to go there. Like I hate small talk. I find it so boring. I want the interesting conversation. Again, looking for the dopamine hits where you can. So like being at, a social occasion where you're stuck in like small talk is like one of my worst things. I hate it. I think I'm understanding more now that I don't have to mask it. And actually I've carved out a career path like so many people with ADHD do, where I'm entrepreneurial, I'm doing my own thing, I'm on my own schedule, I don't have a boss. And I feel very lucky that I've been able to do that and kind of I've created like a career for myself that feels that I feel comfortable with because of my ADHD, and it's really driven me. It's really given me that drive to succeed and to because my brain is very fast paced. I think I'm also attracted to other people who are neurodivergent as friends and as people that I want to work with.
It's amazing that you've been on that journey. The oversharing thing is it's very common, because you do feel like you're too much, so you hold it back. But then sometimes it does come out.
It just comes out.
You're at a party and you've gone straight in with the childhood trauma or whatever it might be. And then you walk away and you think, oh my God, they think I'm too much and now hate me and I can never speak to that person again.
Yeah, and you wake up in the middle of the night, like 3 nights later, and you're just like thinking about it over. Or you suddenly have a memory of a time you've done it like 10 years before.
Yes.
You're like, why am I thinking?
Yeah. I think having that, it can create a sort of a phobia, if you like, of acting that way again, which I think that then you snap the mask on, because you go to another party and you're like, oh, I've had that evidence now of what happens if I overshare, so I'm going to put the mask on, I'm going to be well behaved, I'm not going to do anything that's going to make me anxious. And I think that is really damaging to someone's self-awareness, their image of themselves, their understanding of being confident enough to be themselves. Do you think masking in your life has taken its toll, or do you think you've paid a toll in terms of your own self-confidence?
I think I've definitely noticed one of my triggers for my anxiety is meeting new people. I think it's like instantly that hypervigilance of, are they going to like me? Are they going to be my kind of person? Are they going to be like my people or not? And instantly, I think, when you meet people, whether you hit it off or not, like whether they're neurodivergent or not, or it's neurospicy or neurobeige.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people with ADHD have this sort of heightened intuition. You can pick up on people's micro facial expressions, micro mannerisms.
It's
I think
like
you
an
can,
essence of just how someone is like even standing, like holding themselves.
yeah. I think it feeds into the pattern recognition, I think, because I think we've been exposed to so many negative criticisms and corrections because we are intrinsically a bit different to what society expects people to behave like. So we've been corrected so many times, and our pattern recognition spots that in others. So when we see someone who is not on our side, we're hyper aware and we can see that red flag, where I think other people who might not have that hyper awareness miss. Do you think you've got that hyper awareness, that intuition to see someone who is going to be in your tribe?
I think so, yeah. I do have a hyper awareness of people, and I feel like I've also got like a strong, almost like hazard perception that's on all the time. And that can be quite exhausting. And sometimes being like, is it accurate or not? Or have I just got anxiety about that person over there is a bit sketchy, and is that all in my head? And, the intrusive thoughts.
Yes, there's a degree of imposter syndrome there as well. You have this ability, but you don't always trust it. You don't listen to it, particularly from many people I've spoken to in the community when it comes to choosing romantic partners. You're so good at spotting red flags in others, except when it comes to...
Very true.
I want to get on to relationships a little later on. But do you think there's a good feeling that comes with masking and being good at it?
I think in certain situations it is just necessary, in a kind of just to be professional, or to just when you're kind of being considerate of making other people comfortable. But it can also be really exhausting. Like for a while last year, I was heading towards burnout, but didn't take enough notice of the signs, and I was, going to work and I was not okay, but I was able to go to work and appear okay. And when I got home, I would be, on the floor having a panic attack and unable to stop crying and just basically completely breaking down. But then the next day I would go to work again and put the mask on. And I just got to a point where I couldn't put it back on.
You mentioned your early signs of burnout that you ignored. Do you recognize what those are now, your early signs?
It's like noticing like if I feel anxious and I'm on medication, so my anxiety might not go from 0 to 100, but it would kind of be more moderate, and I can notice it and know what it is and not spiral. Like combined with therapy as well. And it's noticing like when I get those, I can get quite physical symptoms of anxiety, like chest pain or palpitations, or I feel it in my body, and I know now, I'm like, okay, that's not just a random pain. Like that pain is anxiety. That's like energy. That's where it's just currently like, that's where you're feeling it. So it's not ignoring that and being like, okay, why is it happening? Like, okay, I've just had a 5-hour meeting. Was that like good for my health? Like, and no, like I was totally overwhelmed, but I kept being like, it's fine. Just people pleaser. Like it's just got to be super productive. But then afterwards noting that and being like, okay, next time I'm going to say I can't do a 5-hour meeting. It needs to be split into 2 halves. We need a break in the middle. And I'm trying to notice, and like doing like really long shoot days, I can feel very anxious at the end of the day. So it's like, okay, I need to factor in some breaks. I need to do some breath work. I need to, think about what I can do holistically to help combat those big days. And just being okay with resting. It's very hard for me to relax. I actually find it almost impossible to relax unless I'm being like physically made to relax with something like a massage.
Right. Yeah.
Just switch off my brain. I don't know about you.
So exercise has been a big one for me. Just taking a pause, going for a walk, walking my dog, going for a run in the morning. If I'm not able to do that, just doing some kind of YouTube video in the flat.
Yeah.
Movement, I think, is such a reset.
Totally.
If you're able to do it, that 5-hour meeting, bloody hell, it's that hard work that's going on behind the scenes with people with ADHD. I think that is invisible to everyone apart from yourself, the person who's experiencing it? It's the anxiety, it's
The voices in my head were were so exhausting all the time. It was like I was fighting this battle that nobody could see on the outside. No one would have any idea the amount of work that was going into just appearing okay. And I'm on the other side of that now. I have it a lot less, and for anyone that copes with that on a daily basis, it does take a lot of strength to you're doing a lot of work in the background. I think someone explained it like you see like a swan like gliding along the water. It looks like so serene, but then like underwater, it's like pedaling its feet really hard, and that's like the bit that people don't see.
Yeah, the sort of the silent, camouflaged work that no one else sees. And when you had that burnout, that moment where you realized you'd gone past the warning signs and you had gone into full-blown burnout, like what did that look like? I suppose firstly, what did it, from your point of view, what do you think it looked like?
I'd gone from having panic attacks every few weeks to every few days to daily. I developed really intense health anxiety, and every day at some point of the day I thought I was dying, and really felt like it felt very real and very scary. I developed a fear of eating. I choked on, this happened around the same time while I was eating. And then I kind of had this like hyper awareness of eating and the sensation of swallowing. And I kind of developed a phobia of choking again. So I was like terrified of food, living on smoothies. Like this was not a good time. There was a lot, it kind of was like one of those ones where it was a bit of a snowball and just a bit of a spiral into feeling really in a bad place, and I guess a bit of a breakdown, but also a breakthrough, because I got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to look after my health in a different way. And I hadn't been diagnosed then with ADHD. I got diagnosed with panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. I have some past like trauma stuff. And I've been living with anxiety for a lot of my adult life, and then probably for a while some, kind of high-functioning depression. They go hand in hand. So understanding all of that was really helpful. Then when I got my ADHD diagnosis as well, it's like how much of that anxiety was for the ADHD, and understanding that I am more prone to burnout than your average person or your non-neurodivergent person is helping me to have like more self-compassion, and to understand that it's okay to slow down, and you don't have to be like, your worth isn't your productivity, and it's okay to do a bit less, and it doesn't make you lazy, and I don't have to have my diary completely full every hour, every minute. So I'm a doer. I'm like, I make things happen. So I'm just like rambling. Does any of this sound familiar to you?
Oh, it sounds spot on. The diagnosis of anxiety. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety as a disorder when I was 16. How many people I've spoken to who have had that diagnosis of anxiety first, and it's the anxiety which takes them to care first, because the ADHD hasn't been spotted, and it's that's the 7 highly caffeinated squirrels barreling around in your head that it comes from the ADHD, but that manifests in anxiety, which takes you to the GP, the doctor, and then you get the anxiety disorder. And then it's often years later you realize that the anxiety is a symptom of the ADHD. So when you got that ADHD diagnosis, how did you feel when you were told?
I was happy. I was like, yes. And I got a really high score. And from the test, when you have to like click, when you see the same shape or the same color, I can't remember what it was called. There was different parts of the test that I did. But I got a very high score in that part. So I was like, yes, because because I never got high. I never got
Pass with flying colours.
Yeah, pass with flying colours. I was like, yes, I've got it, and I've got it.
Yeah.
I've done really well at having it. And it was really validating. I was like, it just made sense, and it's led me down, it's led me here. It's led me to want to learn a lot more about it. And I'm, listening to podcasts, having conversations with people, realizing a lot of people that I know actually have it. And I've got got a WhatsApp group with a few other women, and we just share memes and sometimes ask each other advice, and that feels nice.
That must be so helpful to have a group who you trust, who you know, that you can just bounce ideas off and share sort of, relatable stories. And it's almost like a tribe within a WhatsApp group, I suppose.
Exactly.
And ADHD sometimes goes hand in hand with impulsivity.
Oh, yeah. I've got that for sure.
Have there been occasions where your impulsivity has got you into any trouble?
I would say I'm a bit of an impulse spender.
Likewise, yeah.
And I think it's that dopamine hit. I booked a trip to the Maldives for us as a family and didn't tell Hugo. I just booked it, and then I was like, oh, by the way, thought we could do this for my birthday. And it was amazing, and I'm so glad we did it, but that, kind of wasn't a very responsible thing to do.
How long was there between the idea of going to Maldives and you booking the holiday?
Probably a few days.
Right, okay.
And I booked it while we were already on holiday somewhere else. Because my brain I find it very hard to even just be where I am, be present, because that's something I'm working on rather than already being in the next. I've realized I love, I don't know if you do this, I love making plans. And luckily that was a plan that did work out. But I'm really keen making plans. And then when it comes to following through with the plan, I want to get out of it. Or I find it really hard to say it's for example, a trip to the theatre or something. I want to leave halfway through.
Yes, it's so relatable. It's more fun making the plan than it is actually following through with the plan. I joke with my partner. I say, do you want to go out for dinner tonight? I get really excited. I book a table, and then we're in the taxi to the restaurant, and I've lost interest in going out for dinner.
You haven't even had the food.
I haven't had the food. Or like you said, cinema or a theatre. The idea of doing it is so exciting. I book the tickets. I travel to the theatre, and the curtains come up, and I'm like, I want to go.
I feel so bad. I'm and Hugo knows me so well, and he'll just be looking at me being like, you want to go, don't you? And I'm like, no. But yeah, halfway through, I'm like, okay, I'm leaving at the interval for sure.
It's like there's that Mount Everest summit theory where if you're an entrepreneur and it's the moment just before you sell the business or the moment just before you complete the marathon that you get the biggest dopamine. And you actually cross the finish line and get what you were going for. That's actually a really low point because it's the process of planning and taking steps to do it that actually fires us up.
Yeah, I love planning. Planning, I've just managed a renovation and found that stressful but rewarding. Planning my daughter's birthday party currently, but I love being in a plan.
I think ADHD is a prism of strengths and challenges. I think if you Google ADHD, it's quite a pessimistic view. It will say struggle with focus, struggle with planning, struggle with organization. It's all struggle and more struggle.
But then I think I'm very organized, but then is that just a coping mechanism? I don't have the lateness thing. I heard you talk about it like a buffet, and it's everyone's going to go up to the buffet and pick something and have something, a different plate of food.
Before you were on time, but because this studio is in a complicated place, and you had a momentary. I took 5 minutes to find you, and the first thing you said was you hate being late. I'm the same. I hate being late, and I question why that is. I think it's because I essentially was taught from a young age that being late is very bad. Do you think there's a reason why you hate being late?
I think it's not wanting to upset anyone, but also I get very fixated on things going exactly to plan. And I've noticed that I can get very upset if things don't don't go to plan, which often in life they don't. I'm like, I feel safe in the plan as it's been, like, as I've mentally prepared for it. And then if I've got a day of back-to-back things and it starts running late, I can find that really stressful. But and I hate the feeling of being late for someone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, me too. It's absolutely just the idea of, I'm always like early, ridiculously early.
I'm always early, but then I think that's like anxiety makes you early.
Yeah.
Do you wake up before your alarm?
Oh, yes.
I wake up
5
minutes before my alarm goes off, or like 15 minutes before.
Or just subconsciously?
Yes. Like always. If I set an alarm, I'll be awake before the alarm. Then I heard someone say that's like a sign of someone that's like a high functioning depressed person, because you're just like so hypervigilant all the time.
You think there's some event in your early years that have caused this sort of hypervigilance to being punctual?
I don't know. I mean, my dad's always early. Like we always like very like early for flights, and I mean, I love having loads of time in the airport. My husband finds it really annoying. I'm like, I just want time. I don't even know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I don't want to be in a rush. I don't like being rushed. But yeah, I think being early is a good habit. But some people with ADHD find time management really difficult and will often be late. So it's interesting how different people take different things from it, or it can be like completely opposite.
Through the prism of ADHD, what would you sort of say are your strengths and challenges?
Okay, I would say my challenges are being prone to burnout, saying yes, being a people pleaser, saying yes if I want to say no. I'm definitely working on that. Just being in my head too much, overthinking. Worrying, like overthinking and worrying about things that are out of my control, which I'm working on. And they are not being so great at being in the present. And my strengths are, I'd say, like the planning, or being very organized, being early, being very in touch with my feelings, being very open. And I think there is a strength in being vulnerable. And I've really realized through like having a presence on social media and changing how I use my platform over the years, that kind of sharing these vulnerabilities and these challenges that in the media, or if you Google it, can, seem like something that's could negatively impact you, and it definitely can. But talking about it, just spreading awareness and breaking down stigma, I think is really important.
What does it feel like then when someone picks you up or shines a light on one of your weaknesses?
Not great. I mean, it happens when especially if you're in the public eye and you're going to put yourself out there. People love to have an opinion and are totally entitled to, but it can be hard when there's a platform and people can literally tell you what they think of you, but without you seeing them. I'm learning to be, have a kind of thicker skin with that. And I've been in the public eye for quite a long time, so I think you do kind of build up a resilience to seeing those comments and just not letting it affect you.
Are you familiar with the term RSD?
I actually want to. I think I've heard of you. I think I've heard you talk about it on other episodes, and I want to know more about it. Is this like oversensitivity to things?
Essentially, yes. So RSD, it stands for rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Okay.
And it's a visceral, physiological response to criticisms and rejections, or even perceived criticisms or rejections. And the academics I've had on the podcast suggest that it's actually more a trauma response based off the fact that we have been exposed to so many more micro criticisms throughout our life because we are a little bit different. So as we're an adult and we're exposed to a criticism, we're sort of primed to react quite defensively, and it can manifest through sort of internalized sadness or internalized or externalized rage. Does any of that ring true?
Yes, definitely. I think discovering actually through kind of becoming a mother, that feeling of rage and realizing that is within me, and things that can trigger it. I think it's like feeling misunderstood or feeling like you're not being heard. And I have definitely found it hard if someone's criticized something like me as a mother, or there's people can say a lot of different things, and there'll be one or two things that can really hurt. But through therapy, it's really helped me understanding that only time someone can hurt you is if they're saying something that you believe to be true about yourself. So, kind of doing a lot of CBT has been really helpful.
I think the RSD is particularly painful when the comment is, it hits something that you sort of intrinsically deep down know to be true.
Yeah. Already you have believed about yourself for a long time.
Yes.
Like
when it sort of hits an insecurity that is there, or even one that you know is there, and you've tried so hard to mask it.
Yeah.
And then someone points it out, and it's almost like they've seen through the mask, and your effort has gotten to waste a bit. I think if you look back throughout your life with this understanding of RSD, although it might be limited, the understanding at the moment, can you see RSD presenting itself in various stages of your life?
I definitely, found it very hard to be criticized when I was bullied. It did really affect my self-esteem, and it created lots of limiting self-beliefs that I've carried with me for a lot of my life. A lot of like shame, guilt, those kind of feelings that I work on now. But I feel in a good place at the moment that if somebody's going to insult you, and if it does hurt, then it's just something I can take to therapy. I'm like, great, it's like showing me a wound, it's shown me somewhere I need to heal. So seeing it as actually something that's useful for healing, and being like, okay, thank you for that. Now I know I need to do some work there and use it in a positive way. You can't control what other people are going to say or think about you. But it just, it's like thinking anything that matters is what I believe about myself.
Therapy has been helpful for you?
Therapy's been really helpful for me. I've done different forms of therapy at different points of my life. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with depression as a result of bullying. And I was so not in a headspace where I wanted help. I just was like, no, I don't want to talk to a therapist. Their school was like, you have to see a therapist every week. I was like, okay. And I went and sat there and just refused to speak. And I wish I'd seen it as, as an opportunity to actually do some healing. But I think back then also people weren't talking about mental health in the same way as they are now.
I want to talk about Made in Chelsea, just briefly. Having appeared on a reality TV show like Made in Chelsea, all about growing up in privilege, has there been any lashback with regards to, well, what do you have to complain about? You've got it all. Yes,
definitely. And I do totally appreciate that I am very privileged, and I guess I have my experience of my ADHD and just my general life experience has been very privileged, and I'm very lucky. I know I probably wouldn't have my ADHD diagnosis if I hadn't been able to go privately to have it, because I know on the NHS it's like a year-long wait list, I believe.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, which is awful. And so there's a lot of people out there that, suspect they have ADHD, but currently are undiagnosed, so they're not receiving treatment for it. And I was seeing a therapist for a while who diagnosed me. And I was listening to a podcast, you were talking about how you talked about your diagnosis quite quickly on social media, and maybe afterwards thought, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I probably waited 2 months or so before I talked about it. And I have found that there are a few people that have made comments, like that, but they're entitled to think that. I'm still going to talk about it because I also think that there's other people out there that find it helpful to see someone that's in the public eye talking about mental health and ADHD, and I talk about a lot about my alcohol-free journey as well.
So how long have you been alcohol-free for?
Over 2 years now.
And what was the catalyst there that made you stop drinking alcohol?
My mental health. and understanding. It just wasn't it wasn't something that was affecting me necessarily in the same way as my friends, as other people. It was causing me problems. Once I had one, I had always had a tendency to, not know sensible time to stop, which is normally past kind of sensible limit, and that kind of urge to binge drink. And it was really doing harm. And as I got older, the ways it was causing harm, but like the problems it was causing me were getting harder to deal with, and it just didn't make sense for me anymore. I was like, this is toxic, and it was like kind of breaking up with that toxic ex at last. Like, okay, breaking free, and it has been really freeing.
It's such a common theme where, if you look at the ADHD item shelf, there's a bottle of wine and there's a bottle of beer. And I think in most episodes, alcohol comes up as a coping mechanism often for the anxiety. And you can have a drink for certainly in my case, to quieten the mind.
Yes.
But often that can render you unable to stop because you get so hyper-focused on the next drink. And that has led a lot of us to some quite dark places. You could
definitely
call it
that next drink, that urge for the next one and the next one. Like I would finish a drink so quickly and then be like on to the next. But other people were like, slowly drinking, and I would be like already like around my third margarita, and then not really. And then some people can drink quite a lot and still stay quite composed, still kind of remain quite in control. Whereas I've written a book about it called Bad Drunk, and I was the bad drunk that, after that third drink was, visibly drunk, and just wasn't a good look.
And the rock bottom that many people experience, their drinking takes them to some really dark places, and often there's a moment that was so dreadful that they were so fearful of drinking again. Do you relate to the concept of a rock bottom?
Yes, I had one. And I had the worst panic attack I've probably ever had. I have had some pretty nasty ones since, but at that point, I'd never had a panic attack that was this intense. And I was away from home. I was on a boat with Hugo. We were staying with friends. It was after we'd had kids. And the youngest one was quite young, and it was hard being away from them. But we'd been drinking a few nights in a row. Woke up, had a hangover, and had a really intense panic attack. And I wasn't aware of it being a panic attack. I just felt like I was dying, and I felt like I couldn't breathe, and really felt like I was going to black out. And it felt very real that was it, and I was about to die. So it was really, really scary to be like, okay, feeling like I was moments from death, and then after the attack being like, that was linked to me drinking, and realizing that kind of alcohol-induced anxiety. I had anxiety anyway, but if you're drinking because you're anxious, to not feel anxious, it's just like literally putting gasoline on a fire, because you're the next day just 10 times more anxious. And that was the very true for me. It wasn't just a hangover, it was like very intense anxiety not even just the next day, sometimes for days after drinking.
And that was your last drink?
Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
The 25th of August, 2022.
Have you noticed any benefits to your concentration, your focus, your just general mental health since you've stopped drinking?
Definitely. I would say it's just really helped me to finally learn to start loving the person that I see in the mirror, to actually do the deeper work. And actually, although I was doing therapy and meditation and different wellness practices before, it's like I wasn't really scratching the surface. And it's like now I've actually started to do the work that was needed, and it's kind of started me off on this like healing journey. And it's completely like transformed my life. It hasn't all been like rainbows and unicorns and like super easy. it's actually been quite hard because I'm not numbing the alcohol. So you've got to feel the feelings. And for a long time, I hadn't been feeling my feelings. I hadn't been, I wasn't willing to feel those, like a lot of discomfort and things that I'd carried around with me since I was quite young. So it's been a journey. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but I feel now I'm 2 and a bit years in. It definitely gets better, but it's not always easy.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh,
I think
thank you.
I think it's always my number one advice. If someone asks for advice for managing ADHD, I think I always say, do you drink alcohol? And if you can quit or at least cut down, because I think, yes, alcohol can in the immediate term reduce the anxiety and have a calming effect. But over even the next day, I think the positives that I attribute to ADHD just get completely muted. And the negatives, particularly the anxiety, just get like turned up significantly.
I was always like, why do hangovers affect me more than other people? But it is, probably because of the ADHD.
I want to talk about relationships, but first I want to draw attention to your ADHD item again. I'm fascinated to know more.
Can we talk about what it is yet?
It's the logo for the Notes app on an iPhone, I believe.
It is.
I'm not going to turn it around because it will break the illusion, but explain why the Notes app is your ADHD item.
I think I've probably got about 4,000 notes in my phone. And my Notes app is how I don't forget things, because I often have a thought, and if I don't write it down straight away, it's gone. And it would be like impossible to think about it, to remember what it was. So it's kind of, I think, a coping strategy for my scattered mind, and being very organized is one of the ways that I cope with having so many thoughts at one moment. So constantly writing things down, keeping lists. I love a list. Oh, I just love a list. Just check it off.
Do you remember to look at it?
Yeah.
You do? Okay, yeah.
I like make myself look at it.
Yeah. That's always the kryptonite sometimes, is you get, like we were talking about earlier, that dopamine of planning, like the writing the list is great.
Yes.
But then actually...
but I think ticking off a list
is also good, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, you're like, oh. And it's like realizing also, if you've made a list of things to do and the thing you want to do least, just get it done. And I definitely get a dopamine hit from that. And I think just feeling like I'm being productive feels really good. Like if I've got stuff to do, got it done, and then you're like, oh, love that feeling.
Do the hardest thing first, and that gives you the dopamine to then get through the rest.
Yes.
Great advice. It's really good advice. I think you're going to like the question in the washing machine of woes. It's the ADHD agony aunt section. And my item is a washing machine because I always leave my clothes in the machine at the end of the cycle.
Yeah.
Do you do that?
Yeah, and then they start to smell a bit like musty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The damp smell.
Yeah, I'm very good at putting laundry in the machine.
Yeah.
And then I hate hanging it.
That's the fun part, is putting it on, because you feel like...
And same with the dishwasher.
Yes. And then when it's your turn...
Hate unloading it.
Yeah. No, it's kryptonite, isn't it? Every week I ask my community to send me their ADHD woes, and it goes in the washing machine of woes. I have a sponsor called the Tiimo app, and since I've been using them, I'm getting better at getting my laundry out of the machine. This week, in the washing machine of woes, my daughter has ADHD and is incredibly impulsive and always getting into trouble, not thinking about consequences. She keeps getting approached on Instagram to go on reality TV, and she really wants to. Do you think it's a good idea?
Wow, that's a good question. It's hard because it's like imagining that being my daughter, in the future. It's so hard to answer that, actually, because I feel incredibly lucky with my experience of reality TV that I came out of it okay. But it did really affect my mental health, and there wasn't the kind of aftercare that there probably should have been at the time. And we did a show. We didn't know if we were going to be liked, if we were going to be hated. We didn't know if it was going to be successful. It actually ended up being super successful. It's still running, which is amazing. But now there's all these remakes. We took a gamble, and I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity, and it's led me here. But would I want? I'd say possibly not.
I suppose
if she feels like there's this impulsivity, and it can lead you to do, to have the kind of guts sometimes to jump in and just do something, which is scary, and sometimes that is a challenging thing to do. But yeah, it's really hard as a mum to say that. I'm sure my parents were kind of horrified when I said I wanted to go on Made in Chelsea. I'd say I kind of want to know what the show is, because there's like lots of different reality shows now. But as a mum, I would probably try and persuade my children not to do it. But then they're also going to be like, "But this is what you did." So I'm going to have to definitely have an answer ready.
I suppose also reality TV is a bit like the internet in the sense that it will always be out there, and certain clips, certain scenes will resurface. So how is that for you, sort of watching, I suppose, now extinct versions of yourself on the internet? And how does that interfere with your RSD?
It kind of feels like it's another person, I feel quite distanced from it, like I am not that girl now. And so it kind of feels like another lifetime. Sometimes I see a meme or something. I do find it entertaining. And I'm just like, oh God, bless that poor girl. So I have a lot more kind of compassion for my younger self when I watch those clips now. Sometimes they're entertaining, sometimes it's a bit more uncomfortable, but I wouldn't go back and do it all again now. But it has led me it has led me here.
And now here you are in a high profile relationship. What is it like dealing with the trials and tribulations of, I suppose, not only growing up yourself, but also dealing with the complexities of a relationship in the public eye?
When we were together, when we were younger, our relationship was, literally playing out on TV. And now it's very different. He's no longer really in the public eye at the moment. And our relationship doesn't, it's pretty private. So I think we've got, you've got the boundaries there. Yes, I do sometimes he's on my social media. Occasionally I'm on his, but it's, just some images or, little clips that we choose to share. And 99% of our time together as a couple is not being aired. So I think, it's challenging. I think relationships in general, when you've got ADHD, and he definitely doesn't have it. Marriage with young kids is challenging, but we've really learned to communicate better the last few years. There have been ups and downs and feeling like growing apart or going in like different directions. And I think, I've learned that you can kind of grow apart and grow back together as well. So it's just like riding the wave, and we're really there for each other. And we've both done quite a lot of work in therapy on our own to be able to understand each other better as well. And I think it's just, you've got to continually work at it. We're going away next weekend to literally watch Netflix in bed for 2 days.
Sounds amazing.
Like not be disturbed by our kids. Literally, like all we want to do is just like be like still and eat snacks and watch TV. Just like delightful. I'm so exciting. So that's kind of where the point in our relationship that we're at right now. But definitely very different to when we were together when we were younger.
With relationships, and I know you said it's private, so just say skip if you don't want to go there. I think RSD and relationships is a common pain point, and we had a relationship therapist who said RSD is the biggest pain point when there is ADHD involved in a relationship. given the sort of brief explanation of RSD I gave earlier, can you see RSD causing issues in romantic relationships in your life?
I think definitely. I mean, looking back, I guess I would have said alcohol caused me a lot of issues in previous relationships, and like having those kind of fiery arguments that would be after a couple of drinks, those kind of explosive rows that normally, you know, it was like things that weren't said, but then after a few drinks, it was suddenly just like this rage that could come out. So yeah, I guess from what you've described of it. But I'm quite interested to know more, what other ways do you think it affects relationships? Because I'm still kind of understanding and learning about my ADHD, and I haven't connected all the dots. So I'm kind of like, tell me how it might be affecting my relationship. Then I can be like, okay, that happened.
Well, I think if we focus on RSD in relationships, I think it can trigger the ADHD partner, and that trigger can look differently depending on how that trigger manifests. And a lot of the time it can just result in a shutdown.
Oh yeah.
Like an internalized shutdown. And you can be having a conversation.
I do that.
And your partner might say something that you perceive as a criticism, and that internalizing happens. And at that point, you're having two separate conversations, but without the awareness of your other partner knowing that that's going on, you can see how that could cause friction and conflict, because suddenly you've zoned out, you've got internalized because you've been triggered, but your partner doesn't know that you've been triggered. So suddenly you get accused of not listening, you've zoned out, you're not paying attention. Do you relate to that scenario?
Yes. It's like hearing something you don't like and just being like, I'm going to shut this down, distract, deflect, leave the room. Yeah. That's definitely frustrated him in the past. And also I think even like with my kids as well, dealing with like their tantrums, and sometimes I'm triggered to shut down and just, I kind of go very into myself, and it's like if I'm being screamed at, I guess it's also like a trauma response. You're like, someone's screaming at you, and I just literally am like zone out.
Is there an awareness of this trigger and shutdown within your marriage?
I think, yeah, it's something I've been working on to definitely have better communication skills. So instead of shutting down, it's actually being like, okay, let's talk about it. Or if it's not the appropriate time to talk about it, let's schedule a time to talk about it. Often if the kids are around and stuff, it's like, okay, let's not do this now. But we've kind of got some good like rules around like how we should communicate, and it's like I'm ready to talk, and my brain's very active first thing in the morning. He's the opposite. I'm like early bird, and he's night owl. So first thing in the morning is no, and in the evening is a no. So it's kind of like not before 10 a.m. or after 10 p.m. I probably should like not be hungry. If I'm hangry, should probably be a few days of the month when we also don't have those kind of conversations. I think, yeah, I definitely have a lot more awareness now than I did a few years ago.
It's amazing. I think that awareness piece stops you from saying stuff in the moment, because without the awareness of RSD and these triggers that are so common, you can lash out verbally in that moment where you're just sort of seeing red, and you've been triggered, you're dysregulated, and you respond in that state. And 9 times out of 10, if you do that, you're going to say something that you don't mean. It can be so damaging to the other partner. So yeah, brilliant advice. Take time out, schedule time when you're not in that state to communicate. It's such a healthy boundary, I think, in a relationship.
I've found, before, like you said, movement can be so key. Like I've been in felt very in a negative mood with him or with something that's happened, and I find running until I no longer feel that energy. That really helps me. And breathing. The kind of like I have a memory of like my mum like having to kind of count to 10, but like now I'm a parent as well. I really understand that that I need to regulate before I respond to my kids when they're triggering me. So I have to practice that at home a lot with them as well as with him.
And I imagine it's not a foolproof process. I imagine there are times where things do get too much and you do snap or you do. And I think are you kind to yourself? Firstly, does that happen occasionally? And because you're human, and are you kind to yourself during those moments?
I have to work to be kind to myself because what the pattern tends to be, it's like buttons being pushed, buttons being pushed, buttons being pushed, then something tips me over the edge, you snap, shout, say something you don't mean, then guilt, shame, blame, and start hating that on myself, basically, and being really hard on myself, which is instantly very negative. So it's kind of catching myself and going, it's okay, you're only human, and then saying something kind to myself and also not holding on to it, just like letting go. And then how you resolve it, I think is really important. How you resolve it with yourself, but also whether it's with the kids or with Hugo, it's like saying sorry, talking it out, not just letting it simmer. And I think I've realized with my kids, like it's okay to sometimes shout, to sometimes you can't, sometimes you just control. It's hard to always be able to take that moment and think before you respond. So I just try and show them my, on a human level, like it's okay to mess up. And I'll say, sorry, I shouted. I shouldn't have shouted at you. Mummy messed up. And I think that's really important for them to learn that it's okay to mess up and say sorry. It's how you kind of make up with them afterwards. And that kind of advice in a relationship of not kind of going to bed angry at each other, not like leaving the house angry at each other. I think that's really important. Not letting it fester, because we like to overthink all of it and just like let it get bigger and bigger and bigger in our minds. And it can just, and also writing stuff down. Often, like if you're like angry about something, something's like really like bothered you, and then you write it out and you write it out and you write it out, and then you're like, why did I think that was such a big deal? It really diffuses it.
I think it's fundamental for the success of a long-term relationship is to have that emotional maturity to when these human moments do happen, where you do boil over, because they will come, they will happen, to acknowledge them with your partner and really communicate and analyze, observe why, what was the trigger, and to have that sort of ability to zoom out together as a couple. And
like what's really going on.
Yeah.
It's often not the thing that's been said that's like led you to boil over. It's like all the other things that were going on.
Or it could have snapped you back to something that happened years ago that maybe isn't even in your conscious, or it's in your subconscious, an early experience.
Yeah, I've been doing EMDR, which I'm finding really helpful. Also, when you realize that maybe there's something that's coming up for you and you're like, where is it from? And
just quickly, what's EMDR?
So it's like tapping, but you do like both sides. So you do it like on your legs. So like you can do it like this on your arms, and it's about like uses like both sides of the brain and your eyes. And I've done it with like when you like watch someone's finger and you're kind of thinking back to a memory, or how like I've done it to process a lot of panic attacks and found it really helpful. If you're not always sure like what triggered it, it can take you back and you suddenly like will have a memory. I'm not explaining it very well, I don't think, so I don't know enough of the science, but it's I was recommended it by my therapist and I found it really helpful.
Brilliant. I'll put a link to more information on that in the comments, in the description. If you could go back in time, Millie, and give your younger version of yourself some advice, sort of with the understanding of ADHD that you have now, what would you tell the younger version of yourself?
I would say it's okay to not fit in. I would say it's actually good not to fit in. I would say I think it would have definitely benefited me to know I had ADHD as a young person. So if I could go back, I would give myself a diagnosis and explain it and say, this is going to cause you some challenges, but also this is a superpower if you can harness it.
Yeah.
And to, I don't think I'd be where I am now doing a lot of the things that I love if I didn't have ADHD.
Do you find it easy to maintain friendships?
I think I've definitely found it challenging in friendships. And over the years, I've kind of learnt that it's okay to let go of friendships and you can grow apart from people. I think, if I'm really honest, the thing I found hard is I think it's with people if they're not neurodivergent, they're neurobeige, rather than neurospicy. You don't find the conversation with them stimulating enough. You don't find it. I want to go deep. Like my best friends, the conversations we have are like very private. Just like talk about anything and everything. I made a new friend recently. I'm doing the school thing now. My daughter's in school and meeting other mums. It's a bit like speed dating. You kind of instantly know if you've hit it off with someone. And the ones that I really get on with, I find like instantly you can just, if you can go deep and just talk about, or just like straight away, just start going into, things that are much deeper than surface level small talk.
Oh, terrible. We're allergic to it.
Maybe your brain, but you can tell if they're allergic to it, but I think it's that dopamine thing. You're like, okay, great, this conversation's like exciting me. And I have quite a select group of friends. I'm very like conscious of my time as well. Do you find it affects your friendships?
I really struggle to maintain friendships. And I put it down to object permanence, which is this theory that if something is sort of out of sight, it's out of mind. If something is not in my immediate now, in my immediate present, it ceases to exist for me. So I'm great at making friends. I love meeting people. I can meet someone in the street, and because they're now in my now, I can instantly become best friends with them, like chat to them, have coffee for hours. But as soon as I leave them, it's very hard for me to maintain that connection and reply to messages. It takes up so much energy. And what happens is time and time again, they float off and they cease to exist. And I stop replying to their messages, and it's another person that's come in and out of my life. There's little things I try and do, like post-it notes on the fridge saying text Dave, silly things like this, but they work in the short term. But really, I've really come to terms with the fact that the best friendships are the ones that don't require that constant maintenance. And I can go weeks, months without seeing someone, and then I something happens that brings them into my conscience, or vice versa, and we text each other and we meet up, and it's like absolutely no time has passed. It's the friendships that require that sort of constant watering that don't last. And
I had a friendship like that when I had to kind of explain, because it was quite a new friendship, that I didn't have the time to reply all the time. But that it didn't mean that I wasn't invested in the friendship. And once I broke it down and explained it, like, hey, I really do value you as a friend, but like I just want to have when I see you, we will have the catch up. I don't have time to daily be updating you. I will tell you all when I see you. And now we've kind of worked out that rhythm that works for us. You see each other every couple of weeks, have like a massive debrief, and then don't speak that much in between. And that works pretty well for me. I've got like my ride or die best friends. I would call an emergency and they would be there, but I don't see them, sometimes, it goes like a couple of weeks and I haven't seen any of my best friends. And then I'm normally like, okay, I should probably do a check-in. I definitely notice with that burnout feeling as well, that sometimes you do just need to prioritize like going for a walk with a friend, and it does really help. It's important. But often I prioritize working, being productive, being with my kids, and then kind of the friendships. It's like when you're juggling so many different things, like work's important, you've got to provide, like spending time with my family is important. I can't like not do that. And then, okay, I've got a little bit of time left, and I'm like, I need some self-care. And then so the friendships are kind of at the bottom of the pile. I found with, especially since having young kids, and you have like at different phases of your life, I think your friendships are quite different. As a new mum or a new parent, I think you're just desperate to have another parent to talk to that's got a child the similar age. It's going through the same thing. And I made friends with people when my kids were tiny, and we don't speak anymore. And now it just depends like the different phases that you go through. But I think my relationship with women is also like related to how I was treated at school, and that's like affected it as well.
How has motherhood been for you, especially as you're going through this process of getting to know yourself on a deeper level?
It is incredibly beautiful and also incredibly brutal. It's like in equal parts, just like the best thing ever and the hardest thing ever. But I wouldn't change it. Like, I love my kids so much. I really want another one, but then also just don't think I could cope. And I think it's my hormones. But at the same time, I love babies, and I think I'll just always be broody. But I'm really enjoying like the conversation with my kids now. My youngest one's almost 3, and my eldest is 4.5, and just getting to do things with them on their own. I really love just spending time with them and getting to know them as people, and they're just so funny and they ask the best questions. It's so rewarding when you are really starting to be like, okay, we're going to have like this incredible relationship, and building on that, and understanding with my ADHD, my tendency to want to be making the plan rather than being in the plan, and how that might affect them. Being like, okay, right, we're doing the plan now, and I actually need to show up for this. This is important. I can't zone out during this time. So I schedule in like time pockets when I'm going to be with my kids. And that's like a non-negotiable in my diary. I'm like, okay, there are things that I might move around, meetings I might change a workout I might not go to. Like if it's the time doing like quality stuff with my kids, it's a non-negotiable.
It's super inspiring to see you, in this new chapter of your life, and looking so well and thriving by the sounds of it. I think it's inspiring. Thank
you. It's it's been a roller coaster, but I'm really glad that I got diagnosed. I find it so interesting.
You've been pretty open about body image and the like, how a mother changes during and post-pregnancy. Can you run us through that process, the self-esteem battle, and where you are now with it?
That's been quite a wild ride. I think it's one thing to go through it as a woman, but all women going through pregnancy, and then postpartum, and this time when you just become a new mother, which is now called, there's a word for it, it's called matrescence, which is going from woman to mother and to motherhood, and how it changes you, and your entire life is different. And it's hard going through such a personal, emotional transition at the same time. You've got all this stuff going on inside, but on the outside, things have changed as well. And for me, it was hard doing that with people looking, with photographers wanting to get the picture of you leaving hospital, looking swollen, looking like you've just had a baby, which is in reality like you've just been hit by a bus. And that's really brutal. It was really hard, and it did affect my self-esteem. And that was definitely a time when people's comments got to me. The self-loathing, and it was hard for me even just to like leave the house. Especially it was more with my first daughter. The second time I was more prepared for it, and it didn't affect me in the same way. But the first time, it was also after lockdown. So, I'd been at home eating for 2 on the sofa for like months. That was really hard. And now, a few years on, I feel in a completely different place. Like I've really stopped caring so much what people think, and I care about being strong. I care about being healthy. I care about exercise because it makes me feel good mentally. I exercise most days because it makes me feel good mentally, and I like feeling strong, and I like feeling like I'm improving at whatever I'm doing in the gym or in Pilates or yoga, running. But I run because I find it fun. I'm not like trying to beat any kind of data. I'm just like this. I just listen to music and find it fun, or I walk and listen to podcasts, and I enjoy movement, and I can understand its benefits, especially with ADHD and understanding, what you eat and how your wellness, your lifestyle is. You can manage your ADHD symptoms. I think it's different for everyone. I found I've tried medication as well, but that I'm trying to manage my ADHD a lot with my lifestyle. I already don't drink, which really helps. So it was quite a wild ride to go through that. But I think it's taught me a lot. I've had 2 kids and I love my body now more than I did in my 20s.
It's very inspiring. And I know there's going to be lots of listeners who are going to be feeling really positive and inspired by what you just said. I can't thank you enough. In fact, I think it's interesting. I reflect back on how I first reached out to you. I think I saw you liked some of my ADHD content on Instagram, and I sent you a DM asking if you wanted to come on the podcast. And you replied saying that you would love to come on the podcast. So I suppose my question is, why did you feel like it was important to come on here today and speak about ADHD?
Because finding out I had ADHD has been very validating for me. It's helped me have a lot of compassion for myself, for the decisions I've made in the past, for the way I've acted, for the things I've done in the past. And that's it's really helping with my mental health, having this deeper awareness. So I think talking about it and breaking down the stigma around it, it can affect people very negatively. And I can only talk about my own experience of how it's been for me. I think, making it something that doesn't feel taboo or doesn't feel like shameful or like a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Talking about, the positive parts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Truly inspiring, Millie. We have a closing tradition on the podcast now. It's a new tradition. Well, it's been a couple of weeks, but it's very new still to me, where the previous guest writes 3 rules to live by.
Okay.
And it gets posted in that post box in the middle of the set, and then I deliver the letters to you. The last episode was a dual. It was a mother and daughter, so there's actually 6 rules, which I'm going to ask you to read.
Okay.
If you've got any voice left. There's the letter from the previous guest.
Okay.
To the next guest, yeah. That's where the budget goes.
3 rules to live by. Don't try to control things you can't change. Such a good one. I also totally agree, and that's something I have to remind myself of all the time, because controlling things makes me feel safe. It's also a trauma response. But you can only control how you react to things. You can't control everything. So that's a very good one. Protect your peace. Yes, very important. Keep a small circle of friends. That's something I definitely do. So yes to all of those. I agree, and good reminder. And then I've got, don't worry about things you cannot change. So kind of similar to the last one, but different way of saying it. Eat chocolate. Completely agree. That's what I was saying about searching for my sweet treat after lunch. Love fiercely.
Strong. It's sort of turning into a mini TED talk at the end of these episodes.
Yeah, I think just put those on and post-it on your mirror.
Yeah.
I think post-its are a great reminder for an ADHD person as well.
Yeah, for keeping things visual.
I do like affirmations on the mirror with like a photo of my younger self. I find that quite like a helpful reminder to like be kind.
That's nice. That's cool. What do you say? So you say stuff to the picture of the younger you? Nice. What do you say to her?
It just depended a bit on like the inner child work that I was doing at the time, but a lot of just, self-compassion, like, I've had like imposter syndrome at different points as well, and just being like, you are enough. That's been a big one for me.
Amazing. Millie, this has been truly, as I keep saying, inspiring, but it really has. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How many screenshots have you got on your phone?
Can I check?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love screenshotting things like that. As much as I make notes, I also screenshot.
The record was 16,000.
I've got 26,000 screenshots.
Ding, ding, ding. You're the new record holder.
I mean, I've got nearly 300,000 photos. So,
Do you remember to look at the screenshots?
yes.
You do?
When I flick back through my phone and I'm trying to remember something, I'll go back through and I'll have screenshotted something like a recipe I wanted to make or some important text. And then you can search in your photos just for a word. So if I've screenshotted, yeah.
Oh, you can do that now,
Yeah.
can't you? That's so clever.
So it's actually, if I haven't put something in notes, sometimes I can find that something will jog my memory in my photos.
How many unread emails have you got?
I have a thing where I hate having a lot of unread emails. So I'll be awake sometimes at 5 a.m. and I just wake up early and I'll just have to go through all my unread emails from the day. If I've done something like a shoot or something like this, I haven't been on my phone for a few hours, my emails will stack up. And when I know they're there, they're just like in the back of my mind, like a weight, like this thing that needs to be done. So I just feel so much lighter once I've like just swap them back out of your inbox again.
Such a good idea. Do you ever reply mentally?
Yes.
And then realise you haven't actually
Yes.
sent the message?
And then you're like, yes. And sometimes although I'm really hypervigilant, I do sometimes totally forget that I've made a plan.
Yeah.
Does that happen to you?
Yes, yeah, all the time. Like I have a visual calendar now, so I write stuff down on an actual physical calendar because as soon as I put it in my digital calendar,
I have two.
It's so helpful.
A written one and yeah.
Because again, it's that object permanence. As soon as it's on my phone, it ceases to exist and I forget to look at it. What about reusable shopping bags? Do you remember to take them when you go to the supermarket?
Sometimes I feel really good when I remember.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of bags within a bag within a bag.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a cupboard in your kitchen?
Yes, full of bags. Yeah. I'm 9 times out of 10 probably forget my bag.
What about domains? Like business ideas, domains. Do you have many of them?
I've had a couple, maybe, about 3 or 4. So not loads, but I have had business ideas and things that I've been excited about that haven't happened.
What about returns? If you buy clothing and you don't like it, could you have it in you to return stuff?
I have an assistant.
Oh,
she does a lot of things. One of the things she does is returning things because sometimes you just don't know until you see it.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, the amount of people, it's the ADHD tax. It's like that. You just don't have the dopamine to return the item, and therefore the return window expires, and you lose the money because you just didn't have it in you.
Yeah.
What about do you go through like fads do you get obsessed with particular foods?
Oh yeah,
meals?
I heard you talking about getting obsessed with things. One of the ADHD traits that I did not know was an ADHD trait until I heard it on your podcast. I was like, what the fuck? Was getting really obsessed with eating one thing and eating it again and again and again, and then suddenly being like, that's disgusting, and having like the ick with it and never wanting to eat it again.
Yeah.
I have that. I had it recently. I was obsessed with eating papaya, specific combination. It was like Greek yogurt with papaya, passion fruit, and then this type of like wildflower honey. And it was like my favorite snack. I had it every day for like months.
Yeah.
And now it's completely gone. Papaya tastes like soap and I don't want to eat it.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm just coming out of a fried chicken and mashed potato era. I've literally had it every night for about 2 weeks. And my partner's like, when this is gonna run out, and now I'm just over it.
It's gone.
Are you a voice note person or a message person?
It's a long message, definitely a voice note. But I'm a let's talk about it in person.
What if someone sends you a long voice note? Is that excruciating, or can you get through those?
So I'll listen to it while I'm doing something.
Good, that's good. Yeah,
like while I'm walking or doing my skincare routine, or I'll just it's 5 minutes. Okay, I'll hit play like while I'm doing something and just listen to it. Voice notes, I do find it really helpful to sometimes I send lots of voice notes while I'm walking. And I find when I'm exercising, I think because of the way it helps with your thought process when you have ADHD, like I'll be halfway through a workout and I'll suddenly just be like, I've got to write that down.